To be a beacon of hope for your allies, or a harbinger of fear for your enemies. To be the last one standing, no matter the cost. A right earned by only one measure, strength. Throughout history, these chosen few were given a title meant for the very best. A title this kid Shoichi seems to be lecturing someone about, but his audience isn't exactly paying attention. The hulking brute just drags him along, casually commenting on the weather. This is Hideo, and he has his own plans for the day. Meanwhile, a different dream is about to be realized. A band of pirates, led by a greedy captain, are promised a priceless relic by a man named Tile. But their celebration is cut short by a brutal arrival. Tile recognizes the monster instantly, Hideo, the Azurean menace. In a flash of violence, the entire crew is taken out. Hideo looms over his old acquaintance, calling him a dear friend. With friends like these, who really needs enemies? He makes his demand clear, take him to the relic. For Tile, it's a grim reminder that some things never change. Hideo marches onward, demanding to know their destination. While Shoichi, still in tow, wonders how this place remained hidden. He suspects the relic's power is to blame for the eerie silence. But Shoichi can't shake the memory of the pirates Hideo dispatched. Hideo scoffs, claiming he spared them a fate worse than death. A fate he defines with a single, chilling answer: to be forgotten. Because nothing says grow up like a lecture from a giant blue menace. But his speech is cut short as Tile announces their arrival. Before them lies the source of that wish. A massive crystalline structure. A relic capable of changing history, and one Tile says should look familiar. Shoichi stares at the crystal, a chilling realization dawning on him. It's a flag, a symbol that carries the memory of its wielder. The overwhelming presence, the memories, the strength. It all belonged to a flag bearer, and Hideo is ecstatic. But Shoichi questions how a legendary figure could ever be forgotten. He tries to reason with Hideo, fearing the consequences of this power. Hideo, ever the patient listener, cuts the debate short. He reminds the kid what happens to those who stand in his way. With the discussion over, he turns to claim his prize. He reaches for the flag, convinced this is his destiny. Hideo roars, convinced this is the day he becomes a flag bearer. But his moment of triumph is shattered by a violent impact from above. Hideo and Tile stare in disbelief at the sudden intrusion. In the chaos, Shoichi realizes the rope binding him is gone. He looks up, trying to comprehend what just happened. A figure stands in the crater, crackling with an unknown energy. Shoichi can only watch as he realizes. A person just fell from the sky. The stranger looks around, calmly taking in the view. He seems completely unfazed by his own dramatic entrance. The stranger looks down, a sense of recognition in his eyes. He calmly observes that Hideo is, in fact, blue. Shoichi watches on, a mix of fear and curiosity on his face. Against his better judgment, he calls out to the newcomer, a decision he would later struggle to explain. He approaches the man who fell from the sky, asking if he's okay. Shoichi introduces himself and offers a helping hand, but the stranger has no name to give, just a flair for the dramatic. He accepts the handshake, casually brushing off his amnesia. But Shoichi's question triggers something deep within him. But before Shoichi can finish his question, Hideo interrupts with a furious downward swing. The massive weapon connects with brutal force, slamming the stranger into the crystalline floor. In the chaos, Tile casually checks on a stunned Shoichi. But from the crater, a single foot steps forward. Hideo stares in shock as his axe handle shatters, completely ineffective against the stranger's head. He swung with all his might, using a pure steel axe, but the stranger just asks if that was his idea of a handshake. Hideo is furious, his beloved axe shattered against the stranger's head. Shoichi recalls the impact like hammering against a solid boulder. Hideo demands to know who he is, a question the stranger echoes. He strikes a pose, cheerfully admitting he has no clue who he is. He looks up, admitting his memory is gone, save for one nagging feeling. Shoichi speaks up, apparently having paid attention to Hideo's lecture after all. He steps forward, insisting that a name is a source of purpose. But the stranger simply thanks him and tells him to leave. When asked where he's going, the stranger says he has a promise to keep. He steps toward Hideo, the very ground cracking from his presence. Hideo's monstrous form looms over Shoichi, asking what a weakling could possibly do. He reminds the boy of the fate he promised, a death that will be forgotten. But Shoichi accepts this, revealing Hideo exploited his dream, a dream to write the stories of heroes, to preserve their legends. He declares that Hideo's story is unworthy of being told, and the stranger, watching from the side, gives that man a name, Shoichi. Shoichi embraces his role as the fool who never gave up as Hideo prepares to strike. With a final roar, Hideo unleashes a devastating blow. The attack connects with blinding force, sending Shoichi's glasses flying. Hideo stands over the aftermath, the dust settling from his brutal attack. But his fury isn't directed at the boy on the ground. The stranger has pulled Shoichi from the path of the attack. He cheerfully notes this is the second time he's had to save him. He then gently scolds the boy for his reckless stand. But Shoichi insists it was a matter of principle, a conviction the stranger seems to respect. He reflects on Shoichi's words about a name giving purpose, and decides to strike a deal with the young storyteller. A request that leaves Shoichi completely baffled, and for good reason. The stranger admits he has no clue, but has a feeling Shoichi is the key. The stranger faces the hulking brute, vowing to take care of him. But then he pauses, admitting he never thought this far ahead. Shoichi looks on in disbelief, wondering what he's hearing. The stranger realizes that with no memories, he has no idea how to fight. So he throws a punch, hoping for the best. The impact creates a massive shockwave of raw power. Hideo grins, clearly enjoying the challenge. Shoichi panics, realizing his new ally is just winging it. Hideo unleashes a devastating counterattack, shattering the ground. Shoichi screams out a name for the stranger as Tile mocks his choice. Shoichi realizes the stranger somehow survived 2 of Hideo's attacks. He considers the man's terrible luck in landing in this exact spot. But then a new theory begins to form in his mind. What if his memories aren't gone, but stored within the crystal? A man with no past, and a relic that holds it. He begs Tile to help him free the flag, but Tile refuses. The man has already given up, convinced that Hideo is unstoppable. Meanwhile, Hideo pulls himself from the crystal, laughing it off. He glares at the stranger, angry that he'd risk it all for a coward. The stranger looks up, asking if weakness is all Hideo saw in the boy. Hideo stares in disbelief, realizing his attack was useless. The stranger admits he may have forgotten his own name, but even he can see that Shoichi has something incredible. And surprisingly, Tile agrees, declaring a debt to the boy who saved him. He rushes the relic, determined to awaken its power, unleashing what he calls the Super Shoichi Punch, a move that proves far more effective on his own hand. But despite the agony, he tells himself he can't give up now, resorting to a desperate barrage of punches, kicks, and even biting. Tile screams at the frozen flag, pleading with it to work. Because if it doesn't, the stranger will surely die. Hideo mocks the man's pathetic attempt at a punch, but the stranger retorts that Hideo can't judge another's potential. He may not remember much, but he has no doubts. That Shoichi is the strong one here? A statement that forces Tile to confront his own weakness. He makes excuses, claiming he'd be stronger underwater. Guess we'll never know. He just wishes the relic would react to him somehow. He tightens his grip, pouring all his will into the crystal. A relic, we're told, is the very essence of a life lived. An experience Tile is getting firsthand, and he is not enjoying it. He's pulled into a reservoir of thoughts and emotions, belonging to an existence that transcended mortality, a being that can only be acknowledged through remembrance. It's all contained within a single, powerful memory. As he holds on, echoes of the past rush through him. He sees a familiar face, asking if he's already giving up. A question that once sparked a fire within him. But now, it's just a bitter reminder of his own regret. The voice of the relic tells him that everything is contained within. His name, his origin, and all the tales that were better left forgotten. From across the cavern, Hideo mocks Tile's desperate attempt. The entity within asks if he truly wishes to remember. With a surge of resolve, Tile gives his answer. He does. The voice instructs him to simply reach out his hand and take back what was lost. It's a power born from memory, shaping its wielder's very being. He must now reclaim the memories that made him who he is. The voice commands him to remember the memories that give him strength. With a final surge of will, the crystalline prison shatters. A promise from the past echoes as the flag is finally freed. It soars through the air, a blur of brilliant blue energy. The stranger looks up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Hideo watches in fury as the relic flies toward his opponent. Tile is left completely stunned, wondering if he actually did something right. The stranger's memories return, and with them his name, Sei. He holds the flag, declaring that this relic belongs to him. A gift, he explains, left by the very person who created him. Shoichi smiles, confirming his theory that the flag was meant for Sei. Tile is just relieved it worked, since his Super Shoichi Punch was a total failure. He's a little confused when Sei gives him all the credit. Sei explains it wasn't the punches, but the words he spoke that triggered his memory. Words that Tile has absolutely no recollection of ever saying. But with his memories back, Sei is certain, and Tile is just glad they have a fighting chance. He asks if Sei remembers how to fight, only to learn he never knew how. A revelation that sends Tile into a full-blown panic. But Sei turns to Shoichi, thanking him for helping him remember something vital. And Shoichi, ever the supportive friend, is just proud to have helped. But one problem remains. Hideo isn't giving up his prize. A fact Tile is quick to point out. Hideo agrees, his body beginning to tear apart. As he declares he's done playing games, he vows to remember Sei's name, adding it to a long list of fools. With that, he unleashes his final, stunning form. Shoichi seems unimpressed, but Tile recognizes this power. He realizes Hideo is trying to end this now. So Tile decides to give Sei a crash course in Fighting 101. And Hideo can only watch, baffled by their mid-battle lesson. Hideo lunges forward, his speed cracking the very ground. Tile frantically tries to teach Sei how to read his opponent's moves. But Sei is already on the move, dodging a massive energy wave. He weaves through the attack with surprising agility, closing the distance with his eyes locked on his target. Hideo boasts that his new form is faster than anyone can handle. He unleashes a flurry of fists, convinced Sei can't possibly dodge. The impacts land with brutal, overwhelming force. Tile watches in horror, realizing his lesson plan was a bit rushed. He screams for Sei to focus, but the blow connects squarely. Tile screams at Sei to look closely, to learn on the fly. With a single glance, our boy confirms he's paying attention. He visualizes Hideo's movements, seeing the origin of the attack. The power builds from the ground, planted firmly, and transfers up through the shoulders and into the arms. All of it culminating in a single devastating punch. But this time, Sei is ready, dodging the blow with inches to spare. He seems just as surprised as anyone that it actually worked. A perfect dodge, executed with all the grace of a cartoon character. Hideo stares in disbelief, his rage growing with every missed attack. Shoichi watches in disbelief, realizing Sei actually did it. Even Tile is stunned, seeing that our boy is learning on the job. Sei takes a moment to process what just happened. He realizes Hideo's own energy gives away his every move. With this new insight, he dashes forward. Tile screams for him to close the distance, launching their counterattack. But Hideo scoffs, claiming one lucky dodge changes nothing. Sei's eyes narrow, his focus absolute. He weaves through a storm of energy blasts, a blur of motion. Hideo can only stare in rage, unable to land a single blow. Sei's eyes glow, explaining his insight isn't just from this moment. He's memorized every punch, every habit, every single detail. He declares with absolute certainty that Hideo won't land another hit. But Hideo just grins, amused by his opponent's confidence. He lunges forward, claiming Sei is mistaken about who has the advantage. It's time for another lesson. You can't dodge during a large attack. He hurls a mysterious sack, claiming this is Sei's moment of weakness. But Hideo's own expression turns to one of pure confusion, as the sack connects squarely with his own face. And Tile flies in, happy to fill in the gaps with a bag. Tile tosses the flag, telling Sei it's his turn. He explains that while Sei may not know how to fight, the flag belonged to a true flag bearer. With that kind of power, one strike is all he needs. Sei doesn't hesitate, driving the flag forward. The impact shatters the ground beneath them. Hideo is launched backward by the sheer force. Guess that Fighting 101 lesson paid off after all. The attack erupts in a massive pillar of energy, blasting a hole straight through the cavern ceiling. Hideo is sent flying, smashing into a distant mountain. Shoichi can only stare, witnessing the true power of a flag bearer. He realizes that without the mountain to stop him, Hideo would have been launched into orbit. As one story ends, another begins to unfold elsewhere. Sei's very existence has created a ripple effect, a stream that will become a surge. But he wasn't the only one feeling this shift in the world. Far to the east, an observer sketches the native creatures of the highlands. We meet Seo, the artist, and her companion, Nailu, who seems to want a little gratitude. Seo offers a reluctant thanks as Nailu clarifies his job is protection, not mountain climbing. But their descent is interrupted by a strange, shimmering object on the path. Seo muses that they are perfect for each other. But her attention is stolen by a brilliant light streaking across the sky. Her eyes widen as she realizes it's a falling star. A realization that immediately triggers an emergency dash. Nailu tries to stop her, but she's determined to follow the star. She recalls an old legend that says a falling star marks the start of a new era. Nailu dismisses it as a myth, but Seo is committed to making him carry her the rest of the way. Meanwhile, Sei is still trying to understand the energy flowing from his relic. Shoichi approaches, explaining that Sei has just used something called an axiom, a power that turns the act of remembering into a world-bending force. Sei plants the flag in the ground, pondering this new term. Axioms. He smiles, realizing his creator is still protecting him, even in death. Shoichi watches on, deducing that Sei must have known the original flag bearer. But this only raises more questions for the young storyteller. He's never heard of a flag bearer who carried these colors, and he highly doubts Sei himself was one, given his unique personality. A man who fell from the sky, connected to a forgotten legend, who forgot his own name and knew nothing of his own power. The oddities just keep stacking up, leaving Shoichi lost in thought, until Sei snaps him out of it with a gentle tap to the head. Sei asks about the stones Tile used in the fight, worried he broke them. Shoichi explains they're just old relics he collected from the ocean, a hobby tied to his personal dream of becoming a librarian, a term that is, unsurprisingly, completely foreign to Sei. He admits he never asked many questions, but thinks the word sounds cool. An opening Shoichi takes with the enthusiasm of a door-to-door salesman. He explains that librarians are historians and adventurers who seek out truth. Their duty is to witness every major event, recording history as it's made. All of it is stored and safeguarded in the legendary Eternal Library, where they fulfill their one true purpose, to ensure the greats are never forgotten. He declares them the greatest organization to ever exist. But Sei is a tough crowd, finding the whole idea rather boring, a reaction that completely deflates our aspiring historian. But Shoichi quickly regains his composure, clenching his fist. He explains that he respects the recorders of history more than the heroes themselves, and he vows to become a librarian, no matter how impossible the task. Sei watches on, a hint of respect for the boy's conviction, but their conversation is cut short as the ground begins to splinter. The entire crystalline floor starts to violently tear apart. Shoichi realizes the relic was holding the cavern together, and now it's collapsing. Sei stands calmly as the cavern crumbles around them. He looks up, speaking to the lingering presence of the relic. He reflects on the goals and aspirations that drive people forward, and decides that from this moment on, he will do the same. So he makes a new plan. He's going to tag along with Shoichi. He's completely serious, offering to help him become a librarian, a proposal that leaves Shoichi utterly baffled. He insists his dream is serious, but Sei's casual attitude isn't helping. Sei explains that with no purpose of his own, he might as well repay the debt he owes the young storyteller. Sei explains that Shoichi was there to reach out a hand, but Shoichi downplays his actions, calling it a simple gesture. For Sei, however, that simple gesture was more than enough to make him want to tag along for the ride. He even throws Shoichi's own words back at him, a reminder of their brief alliance against the Blue Menace. Shoichi calls him an odd one, but a small smile betrays his thoughts. He accepts the handshake, sealing their new pact. And just like that, they officially declare themselves partners. Guess it's that easy. With their partnership established, Shoichi has a question for Sei. With the cavern collapsing, Shoichi asks Sei if he can get them out of there. Elsewhere, Tile has already given up, accepting his ironic fate. But his dramatic monologue is cut short by a firm hand. Sei casually explains that us means all three of them are leaving together. But Shoichi is suddenly struck by a logistical question. If Sei is holding them both, how is he holding the flag? Sei just assumes this is normal, much to Shoichi's disbelief. As they leap to safety, Shoichi can only call Sei an odd one. But as the dust settles, Shoichi has some lingering doubts. He asks if Sei is sure about this, but our boy just reminds him they're already partners. Sei explains that he wants to help Shoichi in return. He reveals he also has a goal tied to the Eternal Library. He wants his father's story recorded, so he'll never be forgotten. When Shoichi asks who his father is, Sei tells him to look behind him. But Shoichi turns around and sees nothing at all. Sei's expression falls as he realizes the truth. He admits that perhaps he was made to forget, but he refuses to let that be the end of it. Then he immediately brushes it off, much to Shoichi's frustration. As the memory of his father fades, Sei resolves to take his first step forward. He vows to see the world his creator wanted him to see. As elsewhere, a ship approaches the very same island. An envoy for the librarian exam, calling out for a messenger. But his companion tells him to stop shouting, since no one can hear. The leader, Alphael, senses that something is wrong on the island. He weighs his duty against the safety of his crew. Deciding the risk is too great, he orders them to turn back. And so the librarian envoy ship sails away from the shore. But from a cliffside, their departure does not go unnoticed. Shoichi recognizes the vessel instantly, just as it's leaving. Talk about bad timing. But Tile reveals this isn't just bad luck. He sent a message before Hideo ever captured him. Meanwhile, Shoichi is impressed Sei found the shore so easily. Sei just says he heard something coming from this direction. But he also points out the obvious problem. Their ride is leaving. Shoichi ponders their options, quickly coming up with an idea that requires a bit of a stare down. A plan that involves some creative bundling. Tile is clearly having second thoughts about this idea. The plan is simple, really. He's just going to throw them. Sei launches them into the air, claiming he got the all clear. They soar across the water, with Tile protesting the entire way. Tile panics, while Shoichi seems to have accepted his fate. Guess he's the stoic one now. Their trajectory is a perfect arc towards the distant ship. But on the ship, Alphael senses their approach. He prepares to intercept the incoming projectile. With a single hand, he stops their flight dead in its tracks. He calmly compliments the throw, welcoming 2 new passengers. But as for the one who threw them, he turns just in time to see the island crumble into the sea. Alphael calls it a shame, ordering his subordinate to record the event. He declares a librarian candidate dead, lost to the collapsing island. Or perhaps 3 casualties, judging by the state of his new passengers. But Shoichi snaps awake, demanding to know who they're talking about. He scrambles to his feet, calling out for Sei. He fears the worst, realizing his new partner didn't make the jump. But then, a massive splash erupts from the waves below, and Sei launches himself into the air, very much not dead. Shoichi's face lights up with pure relief. Our boy lands perfectly, claiming it was all part of the plan. Sure it was. Shoichi brings up the topic of Sei's brilliant plan. He then scolds him for the reckless stunt, but Sei just grins that it worked. Shoichi points to Tile's near-death experience, but Sei isn't convinced it's a new look for him. But their reunion is interrupted by Alphael, who has a request. He declares that the flag Sei is holding belongs to him. A dark energy swirls around him as he grips the relic's staff. His gaze is fixed, his intentions made perfectly clear. The envoy leader tenses, preparing to take what he believes is his. His eyes narrow with an unwavering resolve. He reaches out, ready to reclaim the powerful artifact. But Sei simply flings the flag away, right into Alphael's waiting hand. The envoy leader points, a silent question in his eyes. His subordinate asks if he let go on purpose. But Alphael admits he was completely overpowered. He observes that Sei isn't a flag bearer, yet wields a powerful relic, a dangerous combination that has him on high alert. His subordinate asks to investigate, but is quickly silenced. Guess we know who's in charge here. Alphael warns that a certain someone is always listening. Meanwhile, Shoichi is just impressed. Sei survived the jump at all. Sei asks what he's talking about just as the water erupts. A massive sea serpent bursts from the waves below. The envoy panics, but Sei is more concerned with his naming rights. Alphael notes that chaos seems to follow Sei everywhere. He points to the pulsating red veins, a sign of a familiar curse. He calls them mesmerants, creatures consumed by a foreign memory. The envoy turns to Shoichi for answers, who confirms Alphael's words. He explains that some memories are a torment, a constant whisper, that eventually consumes your very sense of self, and Sei wonders what kind of madness could create such a monster. A sudden feeling washes over a young man, a memory of his mother. Elsewhere, a vision of a brutal conflict unfolds on a desolate peak. Seo and Neilu arrive, realizing the falling star led them to a battlefield. A red-haired woman surveys the scene, her eyes drawn to the white robes. She recognizes the attire, just as Neilu realizes they've been spotted. The woman scoffs, identifying the fallen as librarians. She grins, adding another item to her list of things to destroy. Neilu feels the immense bloodlust radiating from their new acquaintance. He tells Seo to stay back as she questions his intent to fight. But his answer depends entirely on the woman's next move. The woman admits she never understood the librarian's purpose. In fact, their very ideals made her sick to her stomach. But she offers them a deal, tell her where to find Sei. A simple choice between death or helping her find her little brother. Neilu steps forward, claiming they've never heard of him. But her intense hostility is forcing him to act. Seo pleads with him not to fight, but Neilu is resolved. He declares that the choice to de-escalate is entirely hers. The woman's eyes gleam, asking if he's made his decision. Neilu states her intentions are clear, and he will do his duty. Neilu explains the oath tied to the white mantle, a vow to remain impartial, to record history, not change it. But he argues that in a world of constant danger, inaction is not an option. For a record to become history, someone must survive to deliver it, and his duty is to ensure Seo returns in one piece. The woman scoffs, calling his speech a pathetic excuse. Guess she's not a fan of monologues. She claims true impartiality would mean letting her end their lives. But Neilu refuses, declaring they won't be stopped by a fiend. She embraces the title, vowing to burn the world with her insanity. Back on the ship, Alphael announces a change of plans for the exam. He explains that a librarian must face danger to witness history. Their mission is to be present for every moment, no matter the risk. And he challenges the candidates to prove their worth by surviving this crisis. The candidates charge forward, ready to face the sea serpents. Best of luck, kids. Alphael then turns to his subordinate, Korva, with a new order. He admits this is an unexpected turn, but his focus is on one person, a person who is currently trying to fight a sea monster by wiggling a flag at it. But as Sei plays around, another figure steps onto the deck, a shadowy blur of motion launching into the fray. The shadowy figure leaps into action, landing a powerful kick right on the monster's jaw, while Korva, Alphael's subordinate, smirks, clearly unimpressed. This is Isatsana, and she finds this exam a bit underwhelming. Other candidates can only watch, commenting on her flashy style. But not everyone is a born fighter, as another candidate trembles in fear. A serpent looms over a fallen candidate, who resigns himself to his fate. Elsewhere, a red-haired girl tries to snap Tile out of his stupor. But Tile has also given up, ready to welcome his end. Guess his near-death experience quota for the day wasn't met. A decision that infuriates his would-be rescuer, who dashes in to help. The red-haired girl grabs Tile, refusing to let him give up. She declares she has Super Shoichi power, a power that apparently works better for her than it did for Tile. But her confidence is cut short as a serpent looms over them. Just then, another figure dashes into the fray. The girl can only watch as the monster is intercepted. A man with a massive scythe cuts the beast down in a single motion. He turns to the girl, remarking that his help wasn't needed. The scythe-wielding candidate lands with an imposing presence. He looks on with grim purpose, vowing to bring someone back. The scythe-wielder stands over the fallen beast, his name revealed as Rokuro. The red-haired girl whispers his name, a look of shock on her face. Sei turns to Shoichi, asking if he knows this new arrival. But we flash back to a memory of a young boy, boldly insulting the Azurian menace, Hideo. Guess he never learned not to poke the giant blue bear. A memory of that same boy, shattered and broken. Rokuro's eyes burn with vengeance, vowing to make Hideo pay for what he did to his little brother. Back in the present, the other candidates try to calm him down, with very little success. But Rokuro cuts them off, promising to get them to safety first. Alphael watches from afar, realizing this powerful warrior isn't here for any exam. Alphael tells Rokuro to leave, explaining his duty is to the exam. Rokuro recognizes the envoy's strength, realizing a two-front battle is a bad idea. He considers his options, his quest for vengeance momentarily stalled. But before a decision is made, the ocean itself begins to rumble. The red-haired girl looks back in alarm as the water surges. A massive wave crashes over the deck, catching everyone off guard. Shoichi is swept up in the chaos, completely overwhelmed. The red-haired girl's eyes widen with a sudden, terrible thought. She sees the blue flag being dragged into the depths, calling out Sei's name, and our boy is pulled beneath the waves, sinking into the abyss. But beneath the waves, another figure appears, Sei's thoughts drift to Shoichi and a brother he can't remember. The newcomer declares himself the protector of these waters. He notes that Sei's eyes don't glow like a true Azuri. He prepares to teach a lesson on the importance of family, a concept Sei finds kind of obvious. But the Guardian explains this is a truth unique to his people. He begins a story about the children of the Azure, a people who face a deadly trial from the moment of birth. Most perish, but those who survive are forever changed. He explains that survivors carry the weight of the fallen, a duty to protect the only family he has left. A family member he accuses Sei of trying to take. He roars, claiming no Azuri would ever harm another's kin. But Sei asks why they go to such lengths to survive here. To protect themselves from monsters like him, he screams, dashing forward. The Guardian lands a devastating blow. Guess he's not a big fan of unannounced visitors. But he mistakes Sei for Hideo, promising a swift end. And the seafloor erupts from the force of his attack. The Guardian's eyes widen in confusion. But from the dust cloud, a figure emerges. Sei stands, admitting he felt the weight of that blow. The Guardian stares, unable to believe Sei is completely unharmed. Our boy reflects on the Guardian's words about family. He declares that he too values family above all else. And as a younger sibling, he'll prove Shoichi is in good hands. A promise that only enrages the Guardian further. Guess he's not a fan of heartfelt speeches. Meanwhile, on the ship, the red-haired girl tries to save Tile from himself. But as she focuses on him, Sei's flag begins to rumble with a strange energy. The red-haired girl's eyes widen, sensing the shift in energy. The flag slams against the deck, vibrating with immense power. A wave of force propels the entire ship through the water. Below, the Guardian declares his patience has run out. He dashes forward, a blur of motion in the deep. But his attack is cut short by a shocking sight. A hand reaches out, wrapped in a familiar blue energy. Sei catches the punch with ease, stopping the attack cold. He calmly lowers the flag, suggesting a proper introduction. He clarifies his name is Sei, and he has a promise to keep. The Guardian rages, believing this is all part of the librarian exam. He connects Sei's arrival to the dreaded Eternal Library. He dashes forward, vowing that Sei's only fate is failure. Their weapons clash as he screams that his brother will not be taken. The impact creates a massive underwater shockwave. But Sei calmly reintroduces himself, explaining Shoichi is leaving by choice. He declares the boy will be safer by his side, not the Guardian's. Sei's eyes glow, realizing his opponent isn't the listening type. The Guardian reflects that while Sei is fast, Hideo was much faster, but Sei dodges with ease, able to track his every move. Rokuro swings his weapon with blinding speed, but Sei dodges the attack with ease. Rokuro mocks his clumsy movements and his use of a flag. He calls the title of flag bearer meaningless to an Azure. He questions if his brother Shoichi gave Sei false hope, believing the boy was too weak to ever achieve his dreams. But his words seem to trigger something within Sei, who asks if he's annoyed, only to be told he's past that point. With a roar of pure fury, Rokuro lunges forward. But Sei realizes he can match Rokuro's speed, though the reverse is also true. Sei realizes the gap between them is pure battle experience. He recalls Rokuro's counter, a basic principle he's never faced before. Meanwhile, on the ship, the red-haired girl sneezes as Shoichi looks on. Shoichi warns her that any weakness now could be fatal. For once, she agrees, just as another brutal impact lands below. Rokuro looms over a buried Sei, mocking his inability to protect anyone. Sei pulls himself free, admitting that's a work in progress. But Rokuro declares it's too late for that, dashing forward once more. He unleashes a storm of attacks, forcing Sei to experience, learn, and adapt to the battle in real time. Rokuro notes that Sei finally deflected one of his attacks, but he scoffs, wondering if that's really a reason to celebrate. After all, he's landed countless direct hits on Sei, 672 strikes to be exact, without leaving a single scratch. But as he watches, Rokuro begins to understand. Sei mirrors his opponent's stance, a confident grin on his face, a move that is identical to Rokuro's own. Talk about a quick study. A narrator explains that Sei is unaware of his own unique gift, a power that grants him boundless possibilities. The gift of perfect memory, allowing him to learn from anyone he fights. In this world, we're told, memory is strength. A power to take everything you know, to process and remember. Sei knows this is just the start for him, that he's far behind. He admits Rokuro was right. He's nowhere near a true flag bearer. But he vows to catch up to the greats like his father and Shoichi. Rokuro, however, misinterprets this as a final insult. He accuses Sei of trying to take his brother, and now trampling on their father's legacy. Guess he's not the listening type. Sei is stunned, trying to explain the misunderstanding. But Rokuro has heard enough, lunging forward in a rage. Rokuro roars that Sei has no right to his brother. But as he attacks, he feels a familiar energy. He recognizes the power of an axiom just as Sei's flag erupts. Declaring he's heard enough, Rokuro charges forward. He recalls the techniques his father taught him, and screams that Sei will not take them from him. His eyes widen, confirming the presence of an axiom. He unleashes a devastating attack, a vortex of pure rage. The blow connects with blinding, overwhelming force. Sei manages to block it, but feels a strange sensation from the impact. The shockwave from Sei's block powers through, shattering the very tip of Rokuro's weapon. Sei feels the backlash, wondering if this is Rokuro's axiom. But Rokuro says this only proves Sei isn't a true Azure. He declares that our boy is not one of them. He roars, questioning Sei's right to use his father's techniques. Sei realizes he has to block this final, desperate attack. But his arm suddenly freezes, caught in a strange energy. Guess that's not ideal. Rokuro brings his weapon down, accusing Sei of trampling on his family's legacy. A strange red energy reaches out, touching Sei's chest. The strange energy latches onto Sei's chest, pulling forth memories that don't belong to him. The blow connects with overwhelming force, sending his flag flying from his grip. Sei is slammed into the ground, completely stunned. He reflects on the shockwave from the last block, and the immense weight that paralyzed his arm. He finally understands the nature of Rokuro's axiom, the weight he carries, the weight of his fallen siblings, and the duty to protect the one who survived. A miracle born from tragedy, a bond they can never take for granted. He realizes their parents are gone and their father passed down his techniques. Techniques that Sei admits he tried to take for himself. He explains that when he held on to the spear, he saw a glimpse of Rokuro's memories. Rokuro is furious, questioning if Sei has finally lost his mind. Sei admits he might have, but offers a sincere apology. He never meant to trample on anyone's legacy, only to learn from a stronger opponent. He apologizes for acting without understanding the weight of Rokuro's strength. Rokuro listens, asking if that's all he has to say. He explodes in rage, reminding Sei that an apology doesn't erase his actions. Rokuro roars, questioning if a simple apology is enough. But Sei calmly explains that he doesn't expect forgiveness. He only wants to take responsibility, to help carry the weight. Clarifying that this is not an act of surrender, it's a promise to protect Shoichi with everything he has. Rokuro turns, the words finally sinking in. He reflects on Sei's vow to take responsibility. But he has one final question for our boy. He asks if Sei was the one who caused this disaster, because blaming the new guy is always the easiest option. He explains that the Azure are not the only ones who call this ocean home. And that home, Rokuro explains, is being destroyed. And ignorance is no excuse for what Sei has done. He drags our boy along, insisting he see it for himself. They dash through the deep, moving toward the chaos. Before them, a massive vortex churns the ocean floor. These, Rokuro declares, are the consequences of Sei's actions. He explains his duty as guardian extends beyond just his brother. He asks one final time if Sei is the one who caused this, and with a heavy heart, Sei admits that he is. Rokuro seems to respect his honesty, at least. Guess that's a start. Rokuro holds Sei by the collar, demanding an explanation. With a heavy heart, Sei admits his ignorance is to blame. He never understood the consequences of reclaiming his flag, but now he's ready to answer for his actions. Rokuro accepts this, tossing him back toward the surface to atone. Meanwhile, on the ship, the red-haired girl fends off endless sea serpents. Shoichi asks if she's worried about her brother down below. He points out Rokuro's immense power, doubting Sei could survive, but she just grins, completely certain Sei will return in one piece. A confidence that leaves Shoichi baffled, given Sei's track record. Shoichi points out that Sei also remembered he can't fight. He questions how someone like that could possibly face her brother, but she just says she trusts him before vanishing from sight. Guess that's reassuring. Meanwhile, Sei lies at the bottom of the ocean, alive but crushed by the pressure. He realizes Rokuro left him here to die, a consequence of his actions, and he finally admits to himself that he messed up. Every action, every word, every choice, and it was all connected. Some of his actions sparked new beginnings, while others brought about a tragic end. He scoffs at his own vow to take responsibility, never truly understanding its weight, but he decides it's never too late to start again. But a voice cuts through the darkness, noting his tenacity. Sei's eyes widen as he recognizes Rokuro's voice. He assumes the worst, trying to call for his flag. But Rokuro tells him it's no use, explaining that his relic is gone for good. He dropped it into a trench, straight into the planet's core. Talk about overkill. Now, with nowhere to run, they have plenty of time to talk. And Rokuro finally asks the question that's been haunting him. Why did his brother choose a stranger over his own family? He asks how a stranger could inspire such conviction in his brother's eyes, demanding to know what Shoichi could possibly see in him. Sei takes a moment, considering the question. He thinks back on his brief time with the young storyteller, and with a small smile, he suggests Rokuro has it backwards. He claims Rokuro is the one who can't see his brother's strength, and asks if he ever bothered to listen to Shoichi's dreams. Guess family therapy is off the table. Sei explains that he fell into this world with nothing, not even a name, and that he owes the life he has now entirely to Shoichi. He may not know the boy's past, but he knows the man he is today. Sei tells Rokuro that's a question he should ask himself. He explains that Shoichi's conviction was always there. Suddenly, a chaotic vision floods their minds, of Hideo, roaring his desire to become a flag bearer. Rokuro recognizes the voice, as Sei tries to understand what he's seeing. He confirms it's Hideo, somehow alive but transformed by strange crystals. Sei realizes a powerful energy is seeping from those crystals, healing fatal wounds. He concludes that Hideo has become a mesmerant. Guess some guys just can't catch a break. Rakuro realizes the memories devouring Hideo belong to his father, a true flag bearer, and dashes forward to claim his revenge. Hideo's eye glows with a malevolent red light. His crystalline hand reaches out, crackling with power. But Rakuro's gaze is filled with pure, unyielding rage. He unleashes a massive shockwave of his own, a technique now hundreds of times more powerful, but the blast sends Sei tumbling across the seafloor. He struggles to his feet, caught in the crossfire, just as Hideo's massive foot stomps down before him. The force of the impact leaves Sei reeling and injured. Hideo looms over him, ready to finish what he started. But Rakuro's attack erupts in a massive pillar of energy. Hideo just laughs, glad for the chance to meet again. Rakuro tries to reason with him, to talk about their shared history. But Hideo isn't exactly in a chatty mood. He dashes forward, landing a brutal punch on Siwa. Sei realizes his opponent is now faster than ever before, but he feels a strange energy prickling throughout his body. Before he can react, Hideo grabs him by the face. From the ground, Sei sees a beam of red light fire into the sky, an attack that tears through the very ocean around them. On the surface, the beam erupts from the ocean, narrowly missing the ship. The red-haired girl stares in disbelief at the chaos. She calls out as Sei is launched into the sky by the blast. Shoichi wonders how Hideo could have possibly survived that. Down below, Hideo's body begins to swell with a strange power. He realizes the vents on his body grant him incredible speed, the speed of a flag bearer, now twisted and corrupted by the mesmerant curse. Rakuro struggles to keep up, unable to counter this new axiom. Sei realizes his only chance is to somehow call upon his flag, but his body freezes, unable to complete the action. Sei's eyes widen in disbelief, realizing his flag isn't coming. He can feel it, buried somewhere deep under the weight of the world, crushed beneath the planet's core. Guess Rakuro wasn't kidding about that trench. On the ship, the red-haired girl senses that something is terribly wrong, just as another brutal blow sends Sei flying across the water. He watches his own form begin to fade, realizing the last remnant of his father is now gone forever. But the red-haired girl refuses to let him give up. She screams at him, questioning if he'd abandoned the one who's been waiting for him. Her words strike a chord, as Sei remembers his promise to Shoichi. She reminds him the flag was waiting for him this entire time. It overcame the test of time itself. She tells him to call for it, stronger than ever before, to bring it back, no matter what stands between them. With her words echoing, his axiom erupts with new power. He reflects on her words, wondering why he ever gave up. He realizes the weight of the entire world stands between them. But if the world is in his way, he'll just have to tear through it. Because for a man with nothing, there is no greater memory. And on the ship, Alphael recalls a familiar conviction. A conviction Alphael recognizes, to be there for someone no matter what. A promise the red-haired girl screams across the waves. And from the depths of the planet, the flag answers the call. It soars through the air, a blur of brilliant blue energy, landing in Sei's hand just in time to meet Hideo's face. The impact shatters the crystalline armor into 1,000 pieces. Sei reflects on everything he's learned in such a short time, about consequences and ending one journey to begin his own. He finally understands Hideo's obsession with his father's flag. But in the end, it was waiting for him, and he'll carry the dreams Hideo lost. Sei reflects on a world where memory is strength. He finally understands his place in it all. He vows to remember Hideo, ensuring his story is never forgotten. But Rakuro realizes Hideo is gone, likely heading for the surface. He rushes to protect his brother, but is stopped by a sudden impact. He wonders who could have possibly defeated the monster. On the surface, the red-haired girl celebrates Sei's victory. Our boy gives a thumbs up, which he takes as a sign he's okay. Guess floating face down is the new victory pose. Rakuro can only watch, realizing Sei succeeded where he had failed. The red-haired girl grins, admitting our boy is full of surprises. Rakuro reflects on his failure to protect his brother. He admits he's failed twice now, diving back into the depths. He realizes that if he can't protect Shoichi, then maybe the boy is better off by Sei's side. He entrusts his little brother to Sei's care and gives his blessing for Sei to use their father's techniques. A message the red-haired girl relays, claiming Rakuro was just too shy to say it himself. Back on the ship, Alphael comments on Sei's dramatic re-entry, noting it scared off the sea serpents. With the coast clear, he asks if they're still planning on joining the exam, a question they answer with an enthusiastic grin. From the depths, Rakuro smiles, accepting his brother's choice. As the ship sails on, he sinks back into the ocean's embrace, having made peace with this new journey. Back on the desolate peak, Nailu lies broken on the ground. Seo pleads with the red-haired woman to spare his life. But even now, Nailu's only thought is for her to run. The woman compliments his tenacity, but mocks his new look. She claims the red stains on his mantle reveal his true nature, a nature that is all too human and far from impartial. Seo's desperate pleas only seem to prove her point. The woman declares that a life is only worth the values it holds. And with a final brutal strike, she deems his worthless. Her eyes gleam as she confirms his story has come to an end. But the woman's attention is drawn to a strange light from the fallen librarian's journal. Suddenly, a new figure appears in a flash of pink energy. Seo finds herself at the bottom of the peak, safe from the battle above. She tries to call out to her mysterious rescuer, a name on her lips, but the figure vanishes in a burst of light, leaving Seo completely alone. Elsewhere, the rescuer appears before the red-haired woman, apologizing for the intrusion. She hovers in the air, declaring she won't let her harm any more of her members. She introduces herself with a calm smile, her name revealed as Eris. Eris prepares to ask why the woman is here, her hand outstretched. But the woman answers with a furious lunge, clearly not in the mood for a chat. Eris calmly notes the woman's aggressive opening. She observes the fierce look in her opponent's eyes, a look the red-haired woman embraces with a manic grin. Down below, Seo tends to Nailu's wounds, urging him to hold on. She believes Eris's arrival means they're safe, but then realizes she's gone, leaving Seo to wonder where her rescuer vanished. Up above, the battle rages on, with Eris deflecting a storm of attacks. But the red-haired woman realizes something is wrong. Eris isn't fighting back. Her eyes fall on another figure smirking from the sidelines. As Seo screams in terror, a massive structure erupts from the peak. Seo panics, wondering if the woman survived, but Eris calmly reassures her. Eris seems to have expected this outcome, as Seo breathes a sigh of relief. From the crater below, the red-haired woman rises, completely unharmed. Seo can't believe it, realizing she fell hundreds of meters without a scratch. The woman addresses Eris, asking how long she plans to play this game. She accuses Eris of simply dodging her attacks, but notes there's a pattern. Every time Eris teleports, she reappears at a precise distance. Eris admits her opponent has figured it out, but the woman questions if 10 feet is enough to keep her safe. With a confident tilt of her head, Eris confirms that it is. Guess she's not worried. The woman roars in fury, promising to make Eris regret that confidence. Seo tries to warn Eris, but the librarian just tells her to relax. Iris's eyes glow, promising to show her opponent how large the world truly is. The red-haired woman is trapped, vowing that 10 feet will never be enough to stop her. But Iris explains that this small distance is the gap between a mortal and a flag-bearer. The woman plummets through the void, her power useless. She finally understands the crushing difference in their strength, a reality she refuses to accept, screaming in defiance. Seo can only watch, unable to comprehend what just happened. In the blink of an eye, the maniac is on her knees, defeated. Guess that 10 feet was enough after all. Eris looks down, noting that the young fiend still has much to learn. Eris declares that as long as she exists, no one else will fall. The red-haired woman reflects on the irony of her defeat, realizing the rumors about Eris's power were true all along. She accepts that the librarian is on the level of a flag-bearer. Eris looks down, asking if her opponent is finally ready to concede. But their battle is interrupted by a massive surge of blue energy. Seo can only watch in terror as the very ground begins to shake. Even Eris is caught off guard by this sudden immense power. A power that connects to Seo, reaching for his flag with all his might. Eris turns, wondering if her defeated foe is somehow responsible, but the red-haired woman smiles, realizing where that energy came from. She pushes herself up, chiding herself for her earlier despair. With her little brother fighting so hard she can't afford to fall behind. A dark energy swirls around her as she calls out his name, but Eris reminds her of her place, trapped within a crystal prison. The woman clarifies she isn't reaching for Eris, but for something far beyond her. Guess getting beaten up is a great motivator. Eris turns, caught off guard by this sudden surge of power. The woman's will tears a hole in the very fabric of space, and Eris can only watch, her eye reflecting the chaos. The crystalline prison begins to crack and splinter from within. In a flash of red and white, the two combatants clash. The woman's power erupts, shattering the very space around them. And for the first time, Eris is caught completely off guard. Seo watches on, her eyes filled with a new determination. Eris looks down at her hand, now bleeding from the impact. The red-haired woman scoffs, unimpressed by the so-called flag-bearer. Seo calls out in relief, seeing that Eris is still standing. Guess she's harder to get rid of than a bad habit. But her relief turns to horror as she notices something is wrong. She points out the blood on Eris's face, a sight that even surprises the librarian herself. Iris touches her cheek, a look of genuine surprise on her face. She confirms to herself that she is, in fact, bleeding. The red-haired woman watches, her victory seemingly confirmed. But Eris throws her head back in a fit of unsettling laughter. A laugh so terrible that Seo can't help but comment on it. The red-haired woman notes it's been decades since she last saw Eris bleed. Eris admits her opponent landed a clean hit and asks if she wants to continue. But the woman declines, deciding to end the fight here. A decision Seo attributes to Eris's laugh being a weapon of its own. As Iris turns to leave, the woman explains she has another place to visit. She admits that in her current state she can't win. But Eris listens as the woman explains her long list of things to destroy, and declares that the librarian is at the very top of that list. Iris seems flattered, asking for the name of her future destroyer. The woman introduces herself as Aina, vowing to return stronger than ever. A promise Eris accepts, claiming her eyes never forget a face. With their introductions made, Ina vanishes in a flash. Seo is just relieved the maniac is gone, but Eris is already moving on. She denies the girl's request for a break, stating the librarian exam is about to begin, and wonders if any of this year's candidates will be as exciting as Ina. With a moment of calm, Shoichi finally asks Sei a question. He wants to know where our boy came from. Guess the sky isn't a specific enough answer. Sei cheerfully admits he has no clue, much to Shoichi's dismay. He only remembers being with family, then suddenly falling into this world. A revelation that leaves the young storyteller deep in thought. Shoichi suddenly calls him a good guy, catching Sei completely off guard. Sei returns the compliment. As Shoichi begins to share his own story, he speaks of collecting artifacts, but one in particular always stood out. It told the story of a man who fell from the sky with skin like stone, a figure once believed to be a savior, but who is actually an ender of worlds. An envoy announces that their destination is finally in sight. They've arrived at the Scattered Reef, the first stage of the librarian exam. As the candidates prepare, Shoichi wonders if the legend was just a story. He knows he can trust Sei, but so many questions still remain. He resolves to find the answers he seeks at the Eternal Library. But just as the exam begins, a blur of motion cuts through the air. A new figure lands gracefully on the ship's railing. The red-haired girl stares in surprise at the sudden arrival. The envoy members demand to know who this stranger is. The newcomer seems completely unbothered, taking a moment to introduce himself. He introduces himself as Johann, asking if he's interrupting anything. But another candidate stares in shock, recognizing the newcomer. His gaze falls on the brilliant blue flag behind Sei. Johann, however, just comments on the unique accessory. But Sei's eyes narrow, a flicker of recognition in his own. Alphael steps in, reminding Johann that everyone here is under his authority. But his warning is lost on the newcomer, who has already fallen asleep. Guess he's not one for long speeches. Alphael senses no hostility from the sleeping man, so he orders the other candidates to simply ignore him. But Sei decides to drag him along, insisting he be present for the exam. The red-haired girl tries to rally Tile to their side, but Tile tells Shoichi this is his moment to focus on his own dream. He insists that he's useless to them now, a liability, and that to succeed they must be willing to cast him aside. He tells Shoichi that their paths must now diverge, a sentiment the red-haired girl seems to accept. But Sei sees through the harsh words, recognizing it as Tile's own brand of kindness. Tile then scolds the girl for trying to wake Johann, asking if his speech meant nothing. Shoichi takes the words to heart, realizing he can't be a burden to Sei any longer. He reflects on every sacrifice made, knowing it all comes down to this moment. He knows that to succeed, he must overcome everyone else here. A sea of faces, all driven by the same ambition. A resolve the red-haired girl shares with fierce determination. Just then, another group arrives, apologizing for their tardiness. Their leader smiles, announcing that all the contestants are now present. One of his companions eagerly tells them to get a move on, but another candidate sizes up the newcomers, his eyes landing on Sei. This is Richard, and he never expected to see a flag holder here. He mockingly asks if the flag is some kind of joke, but another figure steps forward, his gaze intense and knowing. He claims that no one here would mistake the purpose of a flag. He turns to Sei, the man with the banner, and asks if he's come here to declare war. Talk about a warm welcome. The red-haired girl quickly tries to defuse the situation. She insists it's just a piece of cloth on a stick, as the man smirks. Richard bursts out laughing, claiming it was all just a joke. But the other man isn't convinced, noting the banner's unfamiliar colors. He introduces himself as Richard, offering a handshake for now. He says there's no harm in introductions, even if they're fated to be rivals. But Sei, still carrying a sleeping man, just offers a friendly smile in return. Shoichi quickly steps in, explaining Sei is new to, well, everything. Richard accepts the explanation for now, wishing them luck before walking away. The red-haired girl scolds Sei for not understanding the handshake. Guess social cues aren't part of his skill set. She tries to get him to blend in, as Shoichi wishes the ground would swallow him whole. Elsewhere, another candidate notes the flimsy excuse but admits the flag is eye-catching. She declares that she will be the one to stand out the most here. Her companion seems completely unimpressed, commenting on the rowdy newcomers. An official finally steps forward, announcing the exam is about to begin. He instructs the candidates to line up before one of the examiners. A shadowy figure warns them to listen closely, as they'll be asked 5 questions. The examiner lists the 5 questions: name, age, birth date, occupation, and origin. A candidate yells a string of acronyms at the examiner, who explains this is how they get their entry letter. The examiner seems less than thrilled, asking if the shouting was really necessary. But the candidate just keeps yelling, clearly not getting the hint. Sei admits to the red-haired girl that he only knows his name, and she tells him to just say he doesn't know the rest. An official announces that the candidates will now be split into 5 groups. They find their designated door, marked with a single letter, and the red-haired girl is relieved they're in the same group. The massive stone door creaks open, revealing a dark passageway. The official dashes inside, telling the candidates to keep up. He moves with surprising speed, leaving the others in the dust. The candidates race through the dark corridor, trying to keep pace. The red-haired girl struggles to keep up, clearly not built for marathons. They finally arrive at a massive meeting room, the first stop on their journey. Sei checks on his companion, who insists her Azurai stamina is just fine. The entire O group has now gathered, a sea of unfamiliar faces. The official tells them to size up the competition, but with no time for pleasantries, they're moving straight to the main event. He announces the start of the first preliminary exam, revealing a small orb. The rules are simple. An all-out brawl where only the cleverest will survive. No killing, though. Guess they have standards. Whoever holds this single orb when time runs out will be declared the winner. Shoichi's eyes narrow, the grim reality sinking in. The examiner drops the orb, giving them a 2-minute time limit. With no warning, he declares that the timer starts now. The other candidates are stunned by the sudden start of the exam. And just like that, the room descends into absolute chaos. Sei turns to Shoichi, asking for a plan amidst the madness. The red-haired girl looks to him as well, waiting for his command. But the other contestants are already tearing each other apart. One of them unleashes an energy blast, hoping to claim the orb first. But the attack is intercepted by a single waiting hand. A purple-haired candidate dashes forward in a blur of lightning. She grins, confident that no one can match her speed. Her hand reaches out, ready to claim the orb as her own. But a massive pillar erupts from the ground, lifting the prize out of reach. A blue-haired candidate reveals himself as the culprit, refusing to make it that easy. With the orb now atop the tower, the real exam has just begun. The other candidates see their chance, rushing toward the new objective. The first one to the top will have a massive advantage. Another contestant with yellow-streaked hair prepares to make his move, and the lightning girl debates whether to climb the tower or just smash it. A classic dilemma. But the yellow-streaked candidate blazes past her in a flash. He gathers a dark, crackling energy into his arm, and shatters the entire granite tower with a single punch. The lightning girl is furious, complaining that he stole her spotlight. Even the tower's creator is impressed by the raw display of power. As the orb falls, the brawler declares that the prize is his. But the lightning girl has other plans, using his head as a launch pad. She soars into the air, vowing to be the one who shines the brightest. Elsewhere, another candidate calmly counts down amidst the chaos. This is Yulin, and she is thoroughly unimpressed by the thoughtless brawl. With only 2 minutes on the clock, the room is a storm of panicked brawling. But Yulin sees this as an opportunity, a moment of weakness for the others. Akaris agrees, noting that in their haste, they've lost sight of the bigger picture. But Yulin reminds her that to win, you still have to get your hands dirty. A prospect that has Akaris completely frozen with fear. Guess she's more of a thinker than a doer. She panics, arguing this is a test of brawn, not brains. But Yulin explains that the world is changing, and so are the library's enemies. In a world obsessed with legacy, some will stop at nothing to be remembered. And where the light of the library shines, a shadow is always cast. Now they need people who can survive in that darkness because hiding is no longer an option. Yulin explains the library needs those who can face danger head-on. The entire scenario quickly became centered around those two. The other candidates can only watch, unable to compete. But with only 2 minutes, an opening is unlikely to appear. And with no clock, there's no way to know when to strike. Unless, of course, you were smart enough to count from the start. The lack of a timer was intentional, all to create chaos. Yulin has been counting, knowing she must act in the final seconds. As the timer ticks down, the brawl reaches its peak. She dashes forward, knowing it all comes down to these last 15 seconds. But another candidate had the same idea, also counting down the seconds. Shoichi screams for Sei to make his move now. Sei grips his flag, channeling a surge of blue energy. He slams it into the ground, creating a massive shockwave. The other candidates realize their plan, a last-second distraction. With only moments left, a big enough distraction is all you need. The red-haired girl and the lightning girl leap for the falling orb. The two strongest brawlers realize they've been outplayed. They launch themselves into the air, desperate to reclaim the prize. All three of them reach for the orb in a chaotic scramble. But in the final moment, the orb slips through everyone's grasp. The red-haired girl reaches out, trying to tap it just before it hits the ground. But her fingers miss by a fraction of an inch. The orb thuds against the floor, completely unclaimed, and rolls away as the final second ticks by. The examiner's voice booms, declaring that time is up. Another official confirms that the preliminary exam is officially over. The red-haired girl can only stare at her empty hand in shock. With the brawl over, the room is a mess of exhausted candidates. Well, most of them. And the examiner delivers the final verdict. There is no winner. The red-haired girl rushes to Sei, apologizing for her failure. She's convinced that because of her, no one passed the exam. But Yulin steps in, explaining the difference between winning and passing. The person holding the orb would have been declared the winner. But the examiner never said the others would fail. The official confirms her theory, calling it a preliminary test. He warns anyone feeling relieved to think again. Guess there's always a catch. The goal was simple, hold the orb, and the simpler fact is that every single one of them failed. As another candidate stands proudly, the examiner declares the true test is just beginning. He explains that this next step must be taken seriously. Every candidate must form a pair, a partner they'll be stuck with until the end. With a 5-minute timer, the room once again erupts into a frenzy. The red-haired girl is relieved, figuring she and Sei are already a team. But Yulin sees the true purpose of the brawl, a showcase of talent And based on that display, the most popular candidate is obvious. A massive crowd rushes past the red-haired girl, all heading for Sei. They surround our boy, arguing over who gets to be his partner. The red-haired girl realizes their plan to stand out has backfired spectacularly. Sei now has a choice, as strength naturally attracts strength. The red-haired girl believes their partnership was just a fluke. But Sei turns to the crowd with a smile, offering a simple apology. He explains that he already has a partner, offering a hand to the girl on the floor. She questions his choice, telling him he could find someone stronger. But Sei just asks why he'd ever need a different partner, a response that leaves her completely speechless. He then turns the question around, asking if she thinks he's unfit to be her partner. She grabs his hand, vehemently denying the thought. And with that, their partnership is sealed, much to the crowd's dismay. The other powerful candidates just turn away, looking for a new plan. The brawler's eyes narrow, realizing he needs a partner. Even the most intimidating figures are hesitant to ask. The brawler sweats, seeing his options quickly dwindling. The lightning girl calmly assesses her own popularity. She declares herself the #1 choice. Guess humility isn't her strong suit. The other candidates decide to just pair up amongst themselves. They quickly form their own teams, avoiding the drama. All around them, unlikely alliances are being forged. But her confidence has left her completely isolated. Annoyed, she decides she'll just have to choose someone herself. She points dramatically at a bandaged figure, making her choice. The man, Vilnir, looks up, mumbling something completely unintelligible. She explains that she knows his true potential. She recalls seeing him on the ship, easily dispatching the mesmerants. She declares that with her presence and his power, they'll be the ultimate team. He mumbles again, and she just takes his nod as a yes. Guess communication is overrated. Elsewhere, the brawler and another quiet candidate are left without partners. The quiet one suggests the two loners form a pair. The brawler agrees without a second thought. And just like that, another unlikely alliance is formed. The brawler's new partner introduces himself as Tile, a suggestion that is met with a profoundly awkward silence. The brawler finally speaks, admitting he doesn't have a name. Tile accepts this, but wonders why his new partner isn't curious. He explains that he's never cared much for names anyway. An official announces that everyone has formed their pairs just in time. And with that, the first stage of the exam begins as doorways open all around them. Each pair must now choose their own path forward. The official gives a final warning. Once they enter, there is no turning back. Sei and his partner step into the darkness, wondering what awaits them. His partner notes that their path forward is just a giant door. She questions the strange circular designs on its surface. But she knows that once they cross this threshold, the real test begins. She reflects on her failure in the brawl, a mistake that cost them, and she vows to never let Sei regret his choice of partner. But our boy just smiles, asking if she's still worried about that. She decides to take the lead, grabbing the handle to open the door, a task that proves to be a bit more difficult than she expected. Guess her Azurai stamina has its limits after all. Defeated, she asks for a hand, and Sei is happy to oblige. Elsewhere, an examiner named Oslani directs the flow of candidates. Another official, with some strange companions, confirms the groups are moving. Oslani gives a final instruction to a set of quintuplets, telling them to stay focused. The 5 identical officials confirm their orders in perfect unison. One explains their charm point is that their expressions never change. An odd boast, but okay. But Oslani is interrupted by a familiar face, Eris, who seems pleased with the progress. He turns, surprised to see her, and questions her sudden appearance. But his surprise quickly turns to sheer, unadulterated panic. A level of panic that is, frankly, a little concerning. He points frantically, having noticed the small cut on her face from her battle with Aina. He frantically asks if it was just a clumsy mistake. But a terrible realization begins to sink in. Eris confirms his fears. Someone actually managed to hurt her. A reaction that is shared by the entire staff. Guess their charm point has its limits. Iris asks if something is wrong, completely unfazed. He points out that even the stoic quintuplets have broken character. He demands to know who could land a blow on her, guessing it was a flag bearer. But she clarifies that it wasn't, though the woman did bear a resemblance to the only other person who ever managed to harm her. A flag bearer from over 300 years ago, a fact that leaves Oslani speechless. Iris reflects on her injury, admitting very few have ever managed to harm her. But she hopes to find that same rare quality in this year's contestants. Elsewhere, Sei and his partner are running from a massive rolling boulder. She questions the purpose of these traps, but Sei seems to be enjoying himself. She furiously points out that he's the one who keeps activating them. He just laughs, admitting he's never had to be careful before. Guess that's one way to live. His partner spots an escape route, a corridor just to their left. They dash into the opening, narrowly avoiding being crushed. Sei turns to his partner, complimenting her on the quick thinking. She wonders if he has super hearing, a power that could help them anticipate the next trap. Sei admits that without knowing what to listen for, his power is hard to control. Right now, all he can hear is a chaotic jumble of sounds. His partner notes the downside of such an ability, unable to hear anything herself. But Sei's senses are picking up something far beyond normal hearing. His focus sharpens as he tries to pinpoint the source. She notices his sudden change in demeanor, asking if something is wrong, but he just plays it off with a cheerful grin. Guess I can hear the universe is a bit much for a first date. He quickly changes the subject, pointing them toward a strange room up ahead. But in his mind, he isolates a single sound from the chaos, one that resonated with him, a sound that felt strangely familiar. Elsewhere, another pair of candidates finally reaches a new area. Before them lies a massive circular room with multiple paths. The purple-haired candidate counts 8 doors in total. His partner points out the floor is also divided into 8 segments, a detail he hadn't noticed, but one she insists they keep in mind. She reflects on the traps they've faced, all leading to a single path, but now they have a choice. A choice that has her partner worried about the consequences of failure. She knows the wrong path could lead to even greater dangers. The pressure is too much and he collapses, questioning the entire test. Guess someone's not having a good exam day. His partner reminds him that this is the librarian exam, and random guessing is not the answer. She insists they need to think, believing the answer was already hinted at. She recalls the orb from the preliminary exam, certain it held a clue. The test, she realizes, might just be about finding that very hint. She searches her memory for something that stood out on their journey here. Her partner remembers something strange. The very first door they entered. He realizes it had a unique pattern, a detail she was just thinking of. But he admits he can't remember what it looked like. So close, yet so far. His partner, however, confidently states that she does. She recalls the 3 distinct patterns, each matching the layout of this room. With the path now clear, they dash forward to their chosen door. She explains their path was a simple puzzle, and Akaris wonders if they were the first to solve it. But Yulin explains the solution was easily missed, a dirty trick, hiding the most important clue in plain sight. Their reward is just another massive, empty room. Yulin spots a single door at the far end of the hall, and above it, a strange set of numbers ticks down. She senses a strange energy, an axiom at work. An examiner greets them, noting their quick arrival. Before clarifying they're actually 3rd and 4th, guess first place was already taken. The examiner introduces the 3rd arrival, Veximus, who offers his congratulations, and his partner, a young girl named Emmeline, bound in heavy chains. Yulin dismisses the test as simple, but Veximus is impressed they were beaten. Her gaze falls on the chains, noting they must be a hindrance. But Veximus explains they're just part of the package, a statement that clearly piques Yulin's curiosity. Veximus's eyes narrow, daring her to question him further. Akaris, meanwhile, is just trying to become invisible. But Yulin calmly diffuses the tension, seeing no issue. Veximus seems to accept this, glad they've both made it this far. Elsewhere, another pair celebrates their own victory, certain they were the first to pass. He credits his partner's genius for solving the puzzle and his own memory for the assist. But his celebration is cut short by the sight of the other 4 already waiting. Veximus smirks, telling the little guy he's just a bit too late. The red-haired candidate's eyes narrow with fury. While his chained partner, Emmeline, looks on silently, he confronts Veximus, calling him a rather creative name, and demands that he remove the chains from his partner. Veximus seems less than thrilled with the new nickname, and Yulin calmly confirms that he is indeed the Stonefish Head. The red-haired candidate gives one final warning. He demands that Veximus remove the chains from his partner, but Veximus just looms over him, daring him to try. The candidate's eyes narrow with resolve. He declares that if Veximus refuses, he'll do absolutely nothing. A threat that carries all the weight of an angry chihuahua. Veximus is left completely stunned by the anticlimactic response. The candidate admits he's not strong enough to force the issue, but he vows to free the girl the moment he gets a chance. A promise that leaves Veximus grinding his teeth in fury. Veximus declares that no matter what he tries, these chains are never coming off. Elsewhere, Say's partner questions his choice, but he says there was no other option. She admits the brawl forced her to see her own limitations. A weakness she clenches her fist and refuses to accept. But Say explains that's what partners are for, to cover for each other. She thanks him, but admits she can't be a liability. She vows to be a reliable partner, not a burden. Guess the pep talk worked. Veximus watches on, dismissing the red-haired candidate as all talk, while another candidate sizes up the competition, seeing only 2 real threats. He finds the flag pretender far more interesting. He recalls the beast that was ready to pounce. A cub with immense power, but no idea how to control it. Veximus tries to play peacemaker, suggesting they all get along. He argues there's no point in fighting each other here. But the red-haired candidate has absolutely no plans of getting along. Guess he's not the diplomatic type. He tells the man to leave the girl and get lost, but his words only summon a monstrous shadow. The creature lunges forward in a blur of motion, and Say's eyes narrow, ready to meet the threat. The shadowy beast lunges at the group, but Say tightens his grip on his flag, ready to act. Shoichi can only stare in terror at the monstrous forms. Say cuts through the shadow with a single fluid motion, but another candidate dashes past Veximus, joining the fray. Veximus draws his own massive blade, his patience clearly gone. He brings the weapon down in a brutal, sweeping arc. Sei screams out in alarm, seeing the attack is aimed at Shoichi, but the red-haired candidate intercepts the blow, taking the full force, a result that leaves Veximus with a cruel, satisfied grin. The massive blade slams into the ground, narrowly missing its mark. The red-haired candidate leaps back, completely stunned by the attack. He stares in disbelief, questioning what just happened. Veximus just grins, claiming he was protecting him from the shadow creatures. The candidate calls him a liar, as Richard watches for Say's reaction. He notes Say's calm composure, realizing he knew the attack would miss. The candidate's fury grows, but Veximus just calls it an honest mistake. He turns away, questioning if they really have time for bickering. As more shadow creatures begin to form all around him, the candidate can only stare as a massive beast looms over him. Veximus admits he's grown bored, but an interesting duo has just arrived. He predicts the young cub will be filled with anger as the ceiling cracks. He plans to take him out to make a point, as a slab is lifted from the floor above. The massive piece of stone is sent crashing downwards, and the brawler falls through the newly made hole in the ceiling. Veximus questions the dramatic entrance from above. The brawler emerges from the dust, explaining his simple solution. He says he just punched his way through, as another candidate despairs at the method. A flashback shows him and Tile facing another set of 8 doors. Tile looks dazed as the brawler admits they just guessed their way through. Tile explains that every wrong guess was met with a room full of spikes. He admits he never wanted to be a librarian, just a guy who got swept up in the chaos. Even if he hated his old job, at least it gave him a sense of purpose. But now he's completely lost. The brawler listens, his earring glinting in the dim light. He turns to Tile, admitting that he's lost as well. But he declares that if they're lost, they'll just have to find their own way. He was made to lead, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He asks if they just descended 1 level to get here, much to Tile's confusion. Because if so, their path forward is obviously straight down. Guess his logic is as subtle as his punches. The brawler stands amidst the rubble, declaring their arrival. He tells Tile to jump down as this is their new path. But Tile is less than thrilled, certain the fall would be fatal. His protest is cut short as the ceiling seals itself shut. Say confirms that was Tile, now trapped on the floor above. The red-haired candidate confronts the brawler for abandoning his partner. But the brawler just says Tile will figure it out on his own. A truly inspiring leader. Veximus notes the arrival of another powerful monster. Richard sizes up the new threat, deciding to lay low for now. But as Veximus tries to leave, the red-haired candidate isn't finished with him yet. The brawler tells Shoichi they have bigger problems to worry about. He points to the massive shadow creatures still spawning around them. Shoichi yells at him to prove his strength and take care of the monsters. The brawler's eyes narrow, accepting the challenge without hesitation. But from a dark doorway, a bolt of lightning strikes first.